Every month you're trying to meet 7-figure payrolls and you're going out and asking donors and you're trying to make it happen. It's only the Wild West when you have no control over what's going on. You have no control over your locker room. You got no control over the market. Hey, I have this player and would Louisville take him for X amount of dollars? He's willing to leave X school for X amount of dollars. Well, you're getting those calls and you're getting 3 or 4 guys who all say they have the same player. So like you're trying to smooth out, okay, which one of these 4 guys actually represents this guy? Because we really want. Enjoy the time. You're making really, really freaking good money. I can promise you that.
Dan Furman, president of 502 Circle, one of the biggest names I think you become in the world of NIL and college sports business and how athletes are getting paid in 2025. I mean, you have facilitated personally, well, overseeing the entity that has paid tens of millions of dollars to athletes at Louisville and have become one of the best NIL collectives in the country. So Dan Furman, excited to dive in with you and appreciate you coming on.
No, appreciate it, man. It's awesome. I love what you're doing. I've loved following your career grow and have loved, doing some stuff like Floyd Media and some of the creative things that we're doing along the way. So it's been a lot of fun. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, was that a fair intro? Was all that accurate? Tens of millions in payments, correct?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. It's great. Yeah, we're rolling, man. We've got 502 has just been, I mean, over the last 3 years, the growth has been unbelievable. And the space, the NIL space has, in my opinion, done what a lot of people never really thought that it would do. I think originally when this all started, you were talking about deals at the Mark's Feed Store or a local deal with a gas station chain or, opportunities for guys to go just get a free meal or free hot dog after a football game, right? And now it's turned into millions of dollars flowing through college sports. And I think that a lot of people aren't necessarily with it. And a lot of people are against it, pushing back on college athletes getting paid. And but in the reality, man, like when you really break this thing down, college athletes are a huge asset for universities across the country. And I think that now that revenue sharing's kicked in, there's opportunities for them to have additional streams of income and earning around their participation in college sports. This is only bound to get better. College sports is in a really healthy place where I think ratings are at an all-time high, and I think that the money is where everybody thought it would be over the last few years. Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun, and NIL has created a lot of parity that I think is good for the game long-term.
Yeah. No, just a lot of great points. I want this episode to be really informative for my audience, whether it's, I mean, I'm thinking whether you're a college coach, whether you're the parent of a kid who's going to college, whether you're a fan, whether you are an administrator, that's a lot of the people that listen to this podcast. I think a lot of them talk about NIL, but no one really knows what it means. They don't understand what a collective is versus how the school pays players. We now have revenue sharing in college sports. So I want to kind of start at the basics and make this an informative conversation. And, we'll tell stories along the way, I'm sure. Of your experiences in NIL.
There's plenty of them.
But I'm sure. Start with this. 502 Circle is the official NIL collective at University of Louisville. What exactly is 502 Circle, and how do you guys actually manage and come up with revenue to pay athletes?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And up until about a month ago, that looked a lot different, right? Like there were a lot of different conversations that happened throughout the course of the day that have now shifted. And a lot of it's more university payment driven, but ultimately the 502 Circle is an NIL collective, right? Straight up, straightforward. We were a third-party entity over the last 3 years that has facilitated, I would say, 99% of payments distributed to Louisville athletes, whether that was football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, across the board. We facilitated majority of those payments. The reason for that is because up until last month, when the House vs. NCAA settlement passed, the NCAA didn't allow for universities to pay athletes directly. Where now that the House settlement's gone through, $20.5 million, each school is now allowed to distribute that out to their athletes through revenue sharing NIL payments. So the collective was the day-to-day facilitator of all those payments. Typically in the, like you said, in the tens of millions of dollars over the last few years. And we've grown from literally, I think the day that I started, I laugh about this with our group here. Like we started with $12,000 in a bank account. And I remember vaguely, all of us sitting around a table, and Mark Spiegel at the time, him and I were joking, like in a year from now, we're not going to be able to afford, anyone on the roster with $12,000.
Yeah.
Right. And things grew over the course of a 3-year period into, basically assisting football and men's basketball, pretty heavily in building out what their roster is going to look like throughout the course of the year. So we dove in, we took on a little bit of a front office approach. We were really innovative, in that process. And now it's transitioned to where the school is picking up a majority of those bills to pay the athletes, right? Now that the House vs. NCAA settlement's passed. And we're still operating, assisting them on some of the front office type responsibilities, helping them identify players, helping them recruit players, and ultimately build a roster that we feel like is competitive enough to win a national championship. And I think we've done a great job of that. Football and men's basketball here at Louisville, I think, are in situations that they've it's kind of up to them now. Basketball's got a roster that should open the year in the top 5, and football is going to compete to play in the college football playoff. You've got women's basketball will have a top 25 roster, and baseball just got done in the World Series, and volleyball just lost in the national championship game. So we've had a lot of success. Our AD, Josh Hurd, and his team have done an unbelievable job of putting NIL on the forefront. And across the country, and this may be new for a lot of your audience, not a lot of schools and collectives collaborated very, very well throughout this process. Yeah. There was conflict. A lot of times schools felt like collectives were taking on a lot of attention or power. Collectives felt like schools weren't getting with the times and making quick and efficient enough decisions for their programs to have success in the NIL space. And I would say from the jump at Louisville, that was not the case. We did an unbelievable job of, the second that NIL became a thing, everyone sat around a table and knew that in a few years, this was going to be a recruiting advantage. And how do we get in front of that? How do we provide opportunities now that change the game? And I think we were fortunate. We did it. We put our sports in a good spot to continue to have success, and hopefully it'll have some sustainability here over the next few years.
It's funny. You just mentioned the collectives and the schools working together. It is interesting because there is a lack of alignment there just naturally. You think about collectives that have been trying to raise money from donors to pay the athletes over the last few years of college sports. A lot of times, those are the same donors that were giving to the school previously.
Sure. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And you have the internal fundraising department at the school that wants that money staying with the school so they can pay for facilities and scholarship funds and all that stuff. Now it's getting pulled to NIL because, hey, we got to pay our players and it's only legal if it goes through the collective, and we need the competitive advantage. And it creates this kind of push and pull. But the reality is, I think Mike Loxley, head coach of Maryland, said it best. He said they just did a facility upgrade at University of Maryland. And he said, we missed the timing on this because our guys would get changed in a trash can for $500,000. Like they don't care what the facility looks like anymore. But you guys, I feel like we're so good at the alignment. How do you balance the stakeholders you have to play with and play in the sandbox with? It's the athletic department, it's the donors, it's the athletes, and building trust with those athletes themselves as well.
Yeah, it's a difficult concept, but from the beginning, Josh has done a great job with our team setting the tone that this was going to be about the athlete, right? This isn't about all of us. None of that group is, not coaches, not athletic directors. You're not sitting on the top of the float when you win a national championship, right? Like, let the guys have their moment. At the end of the day, the goal is to get guys here, bring athletes to campus that are going to compete for national championships. And, we're going to put our resources towards investing that into the athlete. Our stadium, our facilities, they're world class, probably lined up really well from a timing standpoint. When I started at Louisville, working in fundraising it was almost 8 years ago now, we were just finishing an expansion to the football stadium. So, $60+ million expansion that it looks unbelievable. We got a great stadium. We got the Yum Center downtown. Basketball practice facilities, one of the best in the country. So we had the facilities in place, and we just kept telling our donors, like, hey, for years, you've always contributed to support our athletes, and you wanted them to go win championships. You want the brand, the city, to be alive and well. and we're the pro team here, right? So when our teams win, the city is vibrant. Like, there's a better mood. When Louisville basketball wins on a Tuesday night, like people are more pleasant around the city on Wednesday morning, right? So
Yeah.
for us, it's been really cool to watch our donors jump on board. They embraced NIL, and those same donors that are given to the athletic department, like they're still supporting the NIL efforts because they know how important it is for us to win, and they know how important it is for the city to continue to grow the way that we need it to. So it's been fun, man. There's not a lot of collision there, like at a lot of schools, but I think that's why we've been successful in the NIL space, and the schools that have done it at a really high level, they've collaborated well and done it with the right people in their corner.
I want to ask about some numbers. And I'm going to preface this with, I'm not asking you, unless you want to share exact numbers at Louisville, because I think that probably is something you can't divulge. But I am curious of just the marketplace in college sports. I know you have your pulse on what a lot of programs around the country are spending. Sure. I'm sure you're comparing notes with other collective presidents, other general managers. What do you think coming, let's say in 2026? The combined spend between revenue share and outside the cap NIL, total payments that to athletes, top tier college football programs will spend come next season.
We're always benchmarking ourselves against schools that we're competing against in the recruiting process and in the conference, out of the conference, no matter what that is. Like for us to compete at a national championship level, you got to know what's going on in the market. In my opinion, there's a lot of really inflated numbers out there. Everybody, they puff their chest and act like they're spending all this money, and that's great. But really, when you break down like the nuts and bolts of this thing, there's definitely outliers, right? There are definitely schools that I think are spending well beyond that $20.5 million going into next year. And I think we'll continue to do that in creative and strategic marketing ways. They're going to set an advantage for their athletes, right? I would say Texas Tech, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, some of those blue blood football schools, because realistically, football has a massive roster. And for you to be extremely deep and competitive on the football side, you got to spend money. Like you don't need a brain surgeon to figure that one out, right? Like the more money you spend, the more good players you get, which means then when guy one goes down, guy two is ready to step up and compete. So I would say that on the football side, if you're able to spend that full revenue share plus probably $3 to $5 million, you're going to be really competitive. You have a chance to compete for those college football playoff spots. So
to clarify for everyone, that would be $20.5 million plus a few million, you're saying?
Yeah, that $25 million range. I think you'll see a lot of those SEC schools jump into the pot, and they'll be really competitive in that range, man. And then with that, you got to think like there's still basketball on top of that, right? So schools that are trying to be competitive in basketball, you're going to be, 5 to 8 million at a minimum. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the House versus NCAA settlement plays out. I think that they're going to do a really nice job of restricting some of the rules and regulations around it. It's just a matter of, man, it's been going on in college sports for years. How do schools find an advantage? And there's always going to be a new way to do this, a new way to create an advantage for your athletic department. And how I guess you'd say, how much risk are you willing to take on in doing that? I think it's all going to depend on what the College Sports Commission does and what type of penalties they're laying down. But it sounds like there's going to be some penalties around, if you do have issues with outside the cap payment, they're going to pull money back off your cap space. So if you're going into a year and you've now got, instead of 20.5, you got 18.5, that's going to hurt, right? And if it's multiple years in a row, it's ultimately going to be really expensive for you to bring athletes to campus.
I want you to explain that for a second, because I think we often live in this bubble of talking about College Sports Commission and cap, and the average fan may not fully understand what we're even talking about. We sound like we're speaking a different language, right? So I want you to explain just the College Sports Commission. So you mentioned the settlement, the House versus NCAA settlement, which got approved, maybe a month ago, is creating this governing structure, if that's the right phrase, called the College Sports Commission, to oversee revenue sharing and NIL in college sports. And part of that is now this clearinghouse where money that is not revenue sharing from the schools. So that's the cap, the 20.5 million cap, just like the NFL has a salary cap, the schools have a salary cap. Money that is outside of that. So say the donor who has a business paying the athlete directly is now has to clear a clearinghouse. And you're referring, right, Dan, to penalties where if that's not a clean payment, a market value payment for a true marketing deal, schools could get penalized for that. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely. So at least that's the feedback we're getting right now. You know, this is still new, so there's a lot of guidance that's still coming out from the College Sports Commission. So the NCAA, a lot of people take the assumption that the NCAA was leading the charge on all of this reform, right? So realistically, the Power Four conferences pulled together to create an entity called the College Sports Commission. And this is made up of athletic directors and now a CEO, Brian Seeley, other key stakeholders that will now help make decisions around the Power Four conference to create a fair environment in college sports. With that, they partnered with Deloitte to create a NIL Go marketplace that it's basically a clearinghouse, right? So every deal outside of that 20.5 million, if an athlete goes and signs a deal with McDonald's or goes and cuts a deal with the collective, athletes are then to report that to the NIL Go clearinghouse. That process has been a little bit funky to start. Hopefully they continue to clean that up. But it'll get you quick responses as to whether the College Sports Commission clears on that specific NIL deal, that specific athlete, whether that deal is fair market value, based on their eyes, based on their data, the marketplace, a lot of different things that go into that NIL Go system. With that, the College Sports Commission is now overseeing the rules and regulations that come with managing the clearinghouse, which is a little bit difficult because on-campus compliance departments are still going to have to do a lot of that monitoring, right? It creates a lot of difficult work chasing down athletes, chasing down the actual details behind some of these deals and making sure they get inputted correctly. Because at the end of the day, if a kid's ineligible, that doesn't just hurt the kid, it hurts the team, it hurts the program, and could potentially be a fine that then gets put back on the athletic department. So the College Sports Commission, what's come out to this point is that some of these penalties are going to look like X. They're going to look like, hey, this athlete, we said the deal was a no-go. We said that $2 million for 10 appearances at local charities wasn't good enough, and you guys went ahead and did it anyway. We have proof that you performed the deal anyway, and this money was distributed. Therefore, we're going to penalize the school and pull back future cap opportunities. So every school right now is at 20.5%, and that incrementally goes up each year. I believe that's about, you mean, right? 20.5 million. Yes. Sorry. Hopefully I don't know what else I said there, but
I know you said 20.5%. I was like,
sorry, $20.5 million, right? For each school. And that number goes up by a percentage each year. It has like a little bit of an escalator in there. Well, each year, if you're docking pay based on penalties, and instead of 20.5 million, you now have, let's just say they get penalized $2 million a year for the next 2 years. Well, that's $4 million over the next 2 years that you're not able to use to recruit and retain some of the best athletes in the country. So that's going to hurt. Like, I don't think that if they actually do that, I think a lot of schools will pull back. They're not going to be as aggressive around the cap, especially when you look at, I would say, some of the schools in the ACC, right? You look around our conference, I can't imagine that a Boston College, a Wake Forest, some schools in those types of situations are going to be as aggressive because they're going to need to utilize that 20.5 because they're not going to be as aggressive outside the cap.
Outside the cap.
Yep. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. This whole world is so complex, and I think that that's why I dive into a lot of content on social, trying to explain to fans of the game, and I mean now coaches and administrators of, hey, this is actually what's going on in college sports, and it's not easy to promote, but it's necessary.
Speaking of what's actually going on, give me your craziest portal NIL story, the one that's made you think to yourself, man, we got to reset this whole system.
Man, I wish I could give you one story, but there's so many that happen that it creates this like chaotic atmosphere. And the biggest thing for me is like, we not only do it once in December, right? You do it all over again in the spring. Yeah. Like you're recruiting and retaining a bunch of players that technically may never play a true snap for you come the end of August. And I think for me, where it drives me crazy, and this is a story that I'll tell the college sports fan base, that it does give you a little bit of what's right in college sports, but it also gives you a little bit of what's wrong, right? So right now, obviously, there's agents flowing throughout the game. And throughout the recruiting process, pretty much what happens is you're getting phone calls all day long, starting probably October 1st, that are, hey, I have this player. Hey, I have this player, and would Louisville take him for X amount of dollars? He's willing to leave X school for X amount of dollars. Well, you're getting those calls, and you're getting 3 or 4 guys who all say they have the same player. So like you're trying to smooth out, okay, which one of these 4 guys actually represents this guy, because we really want him, and this is the value that we're willing to pay for him. So you're constantly having conversations with agents, or I use the word agent probably lighter than I should. It's agents and runners now in college sports, because a lot of these guys are not qualified to actually go represent players at a high level, which makes this really difficult on team and athletic administrative staff, right? Because you may be negotiating with somebody who's never actually spoken to the player, and they just keep telling you, we got this guy. Well, we can't speak to him until he hits the portal. Yeah. So it makes it for a really tough environment.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think this is an important point. Those agents, and the reason that a fan may say, well, why does a player have 4 different agents per se? Well, what's happening probably is that these managers or runners or agents are trying to get an offer from Louisville to then go to the athlete or someone they know who knows the athlete and says, hey, we have an offer for $500,000 from Louisville, but we get 20% of it for brokering the deal. And then they'll go take that offer to the athlete, right? So you think there's a lot of these agents who are running around trying to get deals to present to athletes without even knowing if the athlete's actually interested in leaving and going to Louisville.
Yeah, and there are a lot of really good agents out there that I love working with, have had great experiences with, but there's also a lot of really bad ones. And a lot of times what they're doing is they're actually going and getting a deal for, let's just say, $400,000, and they're subtracting the 20% and giving the kid the number minus the 20%, because they're just taking their deal off top. Hey, I got you. Let's just use round numbers. Hey, I got you a deal for 300. Well, anything on top of that, the agents put in their pocket, right? So there's a lot of that happening around college football right now. But one of the things that drives me crazy is because there's not a ton of I guess you'd say regulation around who is and who isn't an agent in college sports, because there is no agent registry. There's no fee. There's no requirements. You don't have to have a master's degree like you do in the NBA or NFL. Oftentimes you get a lot of people who are underqualified to talk about the numbers when you're negotiating some of these deals, right? These are well into the 6 figures, a lot of these deals. So you may be dealing with a mom. Maybe dealing with an uncle, an aunt, a cousin. Sometimes you're just literally dealing with a roommate at another school, which is insane, right? So you're trying to continue to navigate those waters. But, one of the craziest things I've dealt with to this point is we had a group of guys come in the winter portal of last year. And from the jump, dude, like they were marketing. They were trying to go somewhere else. They were literally there for – They were at Louisville for give me 10 days before we started getting phone calls from other agents and other schools. Hey, this guy's they're shopping this guy, right? This guy's shopping the guy, this guy. And basically it was just leveraging the kid being on campus with us to go somewhere in the SEC or transfer somewhere else in the conference, right? And it literally was there was no intention of ever playing it down for Louisville football. They're coming here because they're going to collect some cash from somebody for the most amount of cash they could for the first few months of the year. And then once that spring portal hit, man, they were going to go catch the next biggest bag down the road from somebody else, whether it was in a conference or not. Like that kind of thing is happening in college sports. I'm hoping that a lot of that gets cleaned up in the next phase of the House versus NCAA settlement. And as some of these transfer rules, they put some guardrails around them, but man, it is really tough to operate from I guess you call it a front office standpoint, right? Like, how do you know what you're even going to have come August 1 for camp if there's a portal in December and you put a team together and you start planning, you train all these guys going into the spring, and then boom, portal hits in the spring, and if you're not willing to up the offer or willing to, overpay, then you might get beat and lose.
Having two transfer portal windows creates just so much misalignment too with the coaching staff, and in spring practice actually having true position battles and actually naming starters and actually being able to build a roster. I mean, think about if you're a head coach and you know that you have a transfer portal window after spring ball, like why even have spring practice? You don't even know who your team's going to be. You may lose 20 of your guys. And think about a head coach. Like if you have a big time quarterback battle, are you going to name your starter in the spring and then risk that the backup transfers right after spring practice? No, you're going to wait till the last possible minute. So it almost puts coaches in this situation where they have to be unintentionally dishonest because they're trying to protect the team. They got to do what's best for the team at the end of the day. So I think having two windows, and I do think there's a lot of consensus in college sports, college football, about having one transfer portal window. Is there any traction on that you know about?
Yeah, it sounds like it's moving that direction. It couldn't come soon enough. I think that's what's best for the players as well. Like I actually like the designated student athlete concept that they put together this year, having a list of guys on each roster that, hey, if that guy needs to transfer, more power to them. Would love to see them go play down a level because they're not going to play here at Louisville. I like that concept of having a list of guys that are, hey, maybe after that spring portal, they are free agents and they are available to move. The issue with having the two portals is that the guys on the roster don't want to deal with it either. Like the guys all those guys came to a certain school to go try and win a championship. They don't want to not know what their team looks like 3 months before opening night, right? So everybody keeps saying, oh, well, it's best for the athlete. It's best for the athlete. Well, maybe in like a very small bubble, but for the most part, these athletes aren't dumb, man. Like these guys are the game has evolved. Like athletes have representation. Athletes are studying what's best for them. They listen to their friends who have gone on to the NBA and the NFL. Like it's pretty straightforward. And the athletes, I think at this point, are trying to put some guardrails around this thing to say, hey man, I don't want my wide receiver, from a quarterback standpoint, I don't want my wide receiver leaving at, the first week in May. And then, we got to go fill it. And I don't have a relationship with this guy come opening night. Like it creates a really difficult environment that, to be honest, that's not what college sports is about. And we talk about like money creating issues like that would be more of an issue to me than the increased earnings. Like if you're making a commitment to a team, to a program, you ride it out for the course of the year. That's why we don't have, you don't have free agency windows in the middle of the NFL season. Right. Yeah. And then it also creates a really difficult concept when we get to the end of the season and there's bowl games coming up. I just saw your content with Bo Perbula, right? Like those are really tough conversations that happen relatively early in the season, right? They're happening as the season goes on at a lot of places. And for a guy to have to make a change while a team's running through the college football playoff is a really tough situation. And I hope some of those things get cleaned up. And hopefully the College Sports Commission will be part of that resolution.
Take me through, by position group in college football, a range of what the top players at those positions are making in total compensation by NIL collective and or the school with revenue sharing. Real quick, guys, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor on this podcast, Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to fire on sports. I've tried all the different apps, sports books, daily fantasy. Prize Picks is the way. On Prize Picks, you're picking players instead of teams. So if you know sports like I do, you can make a bunch of money, especially with the free $50 bonus. So the code NEXTUP or the link in my description. All you gotta do is deposit $5. You get a free $50 in your account that you can use, go 10X, 100X, turn it into whatever you want. Code NEXTUP, $50 bonus, link in description. Let's go.
That's a great question. I mean, across the board, it's so crazy because it all depends on the school and the conference, right? And it depends on the individual athlete. I think if you're looking at, quarterbacks, you're north of, the real dudes, like the guys who are starting and they are defined starters. You're looking at a couple $1 million. The offensive line has skyrocketed like crazy. And if your school's going to go really heavy, you could be looking at $500,000 plus on some of those guys. But realistically, the schools who have a really nice plan try to keep those numbers down so that they can create parity across their roster and take care of the guys that they need to take care of and make sure that there's not just depth, but consistency in the roster. Receivers, the high end guys, you know how it is. It's just like the NFL. Like there's a ton of capacity for guys to make over seven figures, but there's also those guys who are role players and depth guys making low six figures. And then there's guys who are developmental guys that are making, below 100,000. So I always try and look at it, kind of in four categories, right? You have your starters, your key backups, depth guys, and developmental guys. You got your four buckets. And those range based on the school that you're at. But I would say at that top level, those guys who are starters are making legit six-figure money. You've got your key backups who also are probably making right around six figures, if not a little bit over 100. Then you have your developmental guys and your those guys who aren't going to play. Like and a lot of schools have taken the approach where they're going to pay everybody. Like there's, hey, we're going to pay 80 guys. I don't believe in that. I don't agree with that. I think that the guys who are outperforming, the guys who are playing, the guys who do the right things and compete every day do have the right to earn more. Just like the NFL pays, the top stars the money that makes sense. So we take the approach of paying less guys, but we pay the guys that produce, and we're upfront about that with everybody we bring in here.
Yeah. The schools that pay guys a bunch when they first get there in recruiting, it creates an issue because you have guys come into the locker room that may be making $300,000 that haven't played a down.
Yes.
And then you have your veteran receiver who wasn't great out of high school, but maybe he's become a really good player and an important player, and he's making $100,000, and he now hears the new guy's making 300. Well, he calls someone like you up right away and says, "Hey, the new guy's making 300. I'm the starter. I should be making 350."
Yeah, and that's typically why guys leave in the spring. They feel unhappy. Yeah. They feel like they're they feel like they got taken advantage of a little bit because they were loyal. And look, we tell a lot of guys, and in the market, you can make 60-70% more going somewhere else. There's no doubt. Yeah. But what a lot of guys don't take into account is the investment into your development, the investment into the consistency in your career, and the investment in being in a system that knows you and a system that you know. Because if you leave somewhere and you go in the spring, you better make sure you catch that playbook like that, or you're not going to play in the fall, right? So it could derail a career, it could derail your progression. And a lot of people, they lose sight of the fact that when you come in somewhere as a freshman, and you have the same strength coach, the same routine, the same progression throughout the course of a year, that's what gets you bigger and stronger, not going and starting a new program over every 9 months. So the development piece often gets lost in the shuffle. But, I think we've done a great job of making sure our returners understand that we're keeping our roster pretty level across the board. And if you're going to bring a dude in, I don't care what program, I don't care what coach you are, if you are going to bring a dude in that's getting paid more than everybody else, they better be a dog. Like they better come in, do the right things, make sure that they're the same guy every day, because you may sniff it out as a coach over time, or you may sniff it out as a GM over time, but the dudes who sniff it out right away are the guys in the locker next to them. And that stuff unravels a locker room fast. And ultimately in college football, at the end of the day, if you've got older guys that perform and they perform as a unit, you can win a lot of football games, especially in the ACC as this thing continues to change. There's big time opportunity to win games if you play as a unit.
Yeah. How do negotiations go with guys who are currently on your roster versus portal players? What are the differences?
It's the guys on your current roster, you're trying to build relationships with them throughout the course of the year. You get on them early. You start having those conversations a lot of times in October. And you really know, in my opinion, what's good and what's bad about their game, their makeup, their work ethic, all those types of things. So you're having conversations with them, and those are part of the process in the negotiation setup. So there's, in my opinion, like sometimes you save yourself. You guys who want more money and don't necessarily put the work in every day, or don't necessarily have the same type of commitment to the program. Like that can cause issues around your locker room. So you move on, like you can go add that and you can replace that talent at a minimal cost. Now, the thing about that is the conversation about negotiations could be happening for a few weeks, could be happening for 2 months, right? We try and get on guys early, especially if we sniff it out in October that a guy's looking like they're elite, they're going to be a starter for us for 2-3 years. We try and act quick. Now, the difference with that is you may negotiate a football transfer deal. I mean, it might happen in 10 minutes. Like that kid's visit might end and you may jump on with an agent and be like, all right, let's go. Let's get this done. And it's bare knuckles. It's all held. It's all, no bars held for that short period of time, but you hone it in and you make it happen. And a lot of times, we try and make sure guys want to be here. Guys come to campus and they go through that experience. And now with adding Vince Morrow to the staff, like Vince is him and Brady and those like unbelievable recruiters. They get a sense of, hey, this guy really wants to be a part of Louisville football. And that's what this is all about. When they commit, then we figure the numbers out, right? They have a range coming in and everybody knows kind of what things are going to look like. But ultimately, like they do a really good job on the recruiting side to the point where kids want to play here. Guys want to play at the University of Louisville. So those numbers are all, just negotiations and semantics with the agents. But typically those with transfer guys, that stuff happens quick. And in basketball, it might happen even quicker, to be honest, because it's such a competitive environment. There's not as many players. So when good players come through the pipeline, you've got to close and you got to execute. So those things might happen on the spot. Agent might meet you in the lobby trying to get a deal done on a recruiting visit. But that's what makes college athletics fun, man. It's different than pro sports. I know there's a lot of people jumping in it from the pro landscape. College sports is never ending, man. Like it is around the clock, year round. You're recruiting, building relationships, and you're cutting deals. And the art of the deal is what makes it exciting. And it's a cool time for college sports. And I hope that coaches don't take, all of the fun out of what college sports is just because there is a little bit of there's a little bit of minutia there. A lot of guys don't like the NIL space. They don't like the negotiations. They don't like that players get paid. But man, don't let it take the joy out of when you light up your home stadium. Like, it is a ecstatic feeling, like and there's nothing like it. Like I remember we played Notre Dame at our place a couple of years ago when we beat them at home. And man, we were good. Like we had a really good team. And I remember standing on the sideline with one of our donors when they got the pyro going off and the team's running out of the tunnel and there was not a empty seat in this place. And I just leaned over and like it kind of like you're like a little emotional in the sense because we hadn't done a lot of winning, right? Like we had kind of had some mediocre seasons and we were grinding to get this thing back. And now you're going into the Notre Dame game undefeated. I leaned over and I said, yo, man, like none of this is possible without you. Like, do you look at this? Yeah. Like, are you looking at this place? And to see guys who have had so much success in business and in life take a look around a stadium at something they helped build and get emotional about it. Like, that's what we do it for. It's what it's all about. So I love the college sports landscape and it's only continuing to get better.
We've talked a lot about agents in their role in the whole ecosystem right now in college sports. What are the things that the best agents do? The ones that you work with and you say, man, this is a guy that should be representing more players, or a guy who really has the best interest of his players at heart?
Now, it's a great question because there's so many. There are a lot of good ones out there, man. And there's good ones that represent high-level players. They're diligent. They make sure they're following up throughout the course of the process. They make sure the line of communication is strong. They want to know exactly what you mean by everything that you say. And they want to make sure you're clear and their communication's clear on what the expectations of the athlete is. And to be honest, that makes my job really easy. Hey, there's a target. We're trying to both get a good deal out of this. And we're trying to make sure that the athlete has the pieces around them to have success when they get here. The other thing is they're honest. Like, agents being honest, it's a lost art almost. Like, in business, if you're a stand-up guy, typically you're going to get another opportunity. Right. So when these guys are honest, they come into the process and they say, hey, man, look, here's what we're dealing with. The kid wants to come to you, or, hey, this guy wants to go somewhere else. I love that. Okay. The kid wants to come to Louisville. Let's try and figure this thing out. Right. And a lot of times we figure it out and we come to a deal that's fair for both sides. The third piece of it is do not once the negotiation process is done, and a guy so-called commits to a school, that doesn't mean you just let them go and you don't deal with them day to day. Players shouldn't be coming to us asking for additional opportunities on top of their NIL contracts, right? They shouldn't be going to the collective looking for additional marketing opportunities. We're going to get them the stuff that we bring to them. If you're looking for a car deal that's not in the parameters of your agreement, your agent should be helping with that. If you want a card deal that's not within the parameters of your agreement, your agent should be helping with that. And that is where the best agents really come to light, because they're invested in the process from start to finish. They're involved. They're talking to the athlete throughout the season, saying like, "Hey, man, these are what NFL scouts are telling us about your game. This is where you can improve." I see it in basketball. I've had agents call me and say, "Hey, what are you hearing?" Or, "Hey, do you think that he could be more aggressive? And do you think he could do?" And when agents call a guy and say, "Hey, man, you got to play downhill a little bit more," coaches are telling them the same thing, right? It's just that agent is the friendly face, the friendly communicator who's saying like, "Hey, man, you got to take it up a notch, and you can score from all levels, but you got to believe in yourself and go do it." Those types of agents, I think, they're the ones that are going to have the most success over the next couple of years, because you can see social media, the industry as a whole, it's evolving more and more. Guys who are with these kids throughout the course of the process, like it's going to be important to them, and they're going to be the ones who monetize off it.
Yeah, I wanted to talk too about you guys. You specifically have been innovative and on the forefront of kind of a new age of thinking in NIL and revenue driving in college sports with media. The company I'm a co-founder of, College Sports Co., partnered with you guys at 502 Circle to launch Floyd Street Media. You were one of the first people, Dan, that really saw the value in that, I think, and said, "Hey, if we're going to drive new revenue, if we're going to keep creating opportunities for our donors and our sponsors to attach themselves to the athletes, we have to create content. We need media. We need a network to be able to sell into." And, we launched together Floyd Street Media, which, you guys have done a great job of. I think our College Sports Co team has done a great job, but really the first of its kind in college sports. There was nothing like it when it launched. And I think has changed the game in some respects, where now you see across the country more athletic departments and more collectives are starting to think like media companies. But you were one of the first people to do it yourself personally. What went into your decision to say, "Hey, we're going to launch Floyd Street Media," which is the official media network of 502 Circle, the NIL collective at Louisville, and say we need to create content and create monetizable assets with our athletes?
Yeah, people say it a lot, but content's king in this space, man. And you're talking about a really thin margin when you're talking about a competitive advantage, right? And schools who don't have the resources to market their athletes and build their brand and find ways to collaborate them with local businesses, I think they're missing out. Especially here in Louisville, where you come here, you're a celebrity. Like if you're a Louisville athlete, you're a celebrity. Chucky Hepburn, like that guy, his face is going to be up on a wall downtown that says Chucky's Louisville at some point along the way, right? So we're really missing the mark if we're not taking advantage of putting them in front of a camera, helping them grow their career, helping them grow their brand, and ultimately, put themselves in position that when they get drafted by the Toronto Raptors, the Raptors know what they're getting. They know who they're getting. They've seen that content. They've seen the behind the scenes, right? So we actually are not stalling now that the House vs. NCAA settlement happened, right? Like we're able to now take the initiative to go partner with more brands, find new creative ways to put athletes in front of the camera and go out and shoot commercials at Parlor Pizza. And that the art of the $5, the $10, the $25,000 NIL deal is not dead, right? So I think as more and more schools embrace the idea that athletes aren't just a pay for play, like, okay, a lot of people are saying, we're pay for play. Cool. Like, I get it. But at the same time, if we're going to pay them, we might as well have them do something. We might as well help them grow their brand, help them grow ours. And it's a two-way street that I think has been really exciting for us. And I would say Floyd Street Media is still, to this day, one of a kind. We're not pumping out bad content. We're putting out good podcasts. We've brought people on to sit down with the athletes and have great conversation through Athletes Unscripted with Sydney Depp. And those types of things, I think, are what's next for athletic departments around the country. They're going to try and bring those in-house so that they can monetize the opportunities without having to have that additional cost on the MMR side, right? So you're going to see more and more businesses invest on that front. Everybody wants to get into the social media side, right? I think if you ask a business owner, what could they be better at? A lot of times they're like, man, we have no presence on social media. This is an easy way for us to take the reins there for you and take it to a whole nother level, not just for our athletes in our department, but for your business. And I think that in the community, we're gaining a lot of traction. And that's a business that has done extremely well over the last, we're 11 months in, about to hit a 1 year anniversary. And I think everybody's been loving the way that Floyd Street Media platform's grown and will continue to grow over the next, hopefully, 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, it's done millions in revenue, and I think, as I said, has made people think about the place for content and media networks in college sports. So it's been really cool to see, and you were forward thinking and innovative in that front. I'll say that I wanted to ask you this, Dan, because you've had so much success in your shorts. How old are you? What are you, like 30?
I just turned 30, man. I'm getting old.
Man, I'm 30 as well. How'd you feel on your 30th birthday? You felt
I was a little sore when I woke up. It was a tough morning.
But I wanted to ask, because you've had so much success in your short career in college sports, and so many people that listen to this podcast are, aspire to have roles in leadership or be an executive in college sports or maybe pro sports, or want to climb the ladder and maybe they're in college. What's a piece of advice you have for someone who is young and hungry and wants to play an important role in the sports industry in general?
Yeah, I always tell people, man, it's all about showing up. And a lot of people take it the wrong way when I kind of hate when people come to me and they're like, it's all about who you know. Well, no, it's not, man. It's all about who knows you, right? And people that know you, when somebody says, hey, do you know Dan Furman? I want them to say, yes, he's a grinder. He works hard. He's a great dude. He's genuine. And at the end of the day, if you need him to get something done for you, he's going to do everything in his power to figure it out, right? And I want people to understand that. I think a lot of young professionals lose the sight of how much work goes into creating a successful ecosystem around you and building the relationships and investing in those people who want to then in return invest in you. And I think that, it's a lost art of developing relationships and finding ways to leverage those people and those relationships into bigger and better opportunities. So I would say, from the get-go, show up, do the work, and keep finding the people who are going to help get you to the next level and treat them like gold, man. Like, there are people that I've been with at Louisville for the last 7-8 years who I would try and swim across the Ohio River for. And they know that. And that's why when opportunities come up, you're the first phone call. When things become a real issue, you're the first one putting the fire out, right? And those are the opportunities you want to be in. Don't get afraid of, don't be scared of pressure. It makes diamonds, and hopefully, you'll continue to progress along your career.
Yeah. I talk a lot about overcoming adversity, and I've had it in my career. I mean, we all have it. What's been the toughest moment during your time running NIL at Louisville? Has there ever been a moment that's been, man, like, I don't know how we're getting out of this, or, just where you feel like your back's against the wall? Maybe you got to raise some money. Maybe it's your negotiating contract.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And there were a lot of times over the last few years, what a lot of people don't understand about the NIL space is a lot of it's all cash centric, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a cash flow oriented business that's all about when the money comes in is when you're able to put it out, right? And listen, like, it was brutal. Like, the last 3 years without the relief from the school, like, it was tough. Every month you're trying to meet 7-figure payrolls and you're going out and asking donors and you're trying to make it happen. Well, like, that's a tough conversation when you're going to a donor being like, hey man, like, I know I just asked you for all this money. Do you mind sending it today? Like, they're on their own clock too. They have their own lives. They have their own businesses, and they don't move like that. They don't necessarily understand what type of sense of urgency this is with. And those, I would say, are probably, I'll carry those moments of like, man, we're under the gun trying to hit a payroll. And I'll carry those with me the rest of my career. And to be honest, that level of stress, that level of sense of urgency, that's created, in my opinion, given me a whole nother gear when it comes to work ethic, when it comes to solving problems and figuring it out. And was it always pretty? No, like, absolutely not. Like, and I think if you asked any collective director or head of a collective around the country, or like, I ask them right now, like, has this whole thing been pretty? Their answer is going to be no. Yeah. But we figured it out and we won a lot of games. We made a lot of people happy. A lot of athletes had great experiences. And to be real, man, like this city is vibrant. Like people are so jazzed about Louisville football and Louisville basketball coming off of a College World Series appearance. It is exciting in Louisville, and we're excited to continue to ride this thing out. But man, it's been a grind.
Yeah. A couple more things I got for you. I mean, we could talk about this all day, but if you were talking to a 17-year-old recruit and their family today, right now,
Sure.
what would you tell them to look for in an NIL situation? What's the advice you give them?
You got to have transparency. You got to have transparency with the guy that you're working with on the other side of the table. I would look to negotiate with a professional on staff. You know, I think that one thing a lot of kids fall into the trap of is they're negotiating with a coach. I hate that environment. I hate that setup for the athletes. I hate that a coach has to go out and coach you with a dollar sign over their head all year. And it can oftentimes put you in really difficult performance situations. I would want to negotiate with someone on staff who is managing the budget, managing the roster, managing that situation. And if you're going into those conversations and you can work out a deal with one of those guys and you feel phenomenal about the fit of the school, the opportunity to go play, like if you're a 17-year-old kid, man, that is a no-brainer. And that's why, you know, we got one of the best recruiting classes in the country right now. And I think that's because Jeff and Vince and Brady, those guys, they know what they want. And NIL becomes secondary in that, right? There are conversations you have to work through and ways to get deals done, you're beating out other schools. Like that's what you're doing. Like at the end of the day, you're just trying to beat out another school who's making a good offer on a guy, but that kid doesn't want to go to that school, right? You got to get to the bottom of that first. If you're a 17-year-old kid, figure out where you want to go play football, figure out where you want to go play basketball, and then make a decision on getting the number as close to even as possible on both sides.
Yeah, it makes sense. Man, there's so much for these kids to look out for.
It's insane, man. And
a lot of times it's more money than their families ever. I was talking to Jeff Monken, the head coach at Army.
No doubt.
And he was saying, man, like it's tough because he's had these guys on his team who are great players leave to go to other schools, like any group of five coach has. And he said, part of me wants to stand up and shake their hand and say, like, congratulations, man, you're making $500,000. Like, and his point was these kids' parents have never seen that kind of money. Some of them, and like their kids are getting advice from their parents who have never managed a situation like this before.
Yeah, and I may get a lot of heat for saying this, man, but I love Gary V's quote. Like, get up and get away. Like, if you're making your own money, protect yourself first. Like always put your, you know, when you get on a plane, they tell you to put your own oxygen mask on first. Like you got to put your own oxygen mask on first. This is money you may never make again in your life as an athlete or as a business professional. Take advantage of it, invest it, and you can set yourself up for the long term. But ultimately this NIL space, it's moving fast. If there's one thing that I can tell athletes, man, enjoy it. Like these are supposed to be the greatest years of your life. And a lot of times athletes are complaining, they're moaning, I'm not happy with my money, they're messing with my money. Like, no, man, like enjoy it. Enjoy the time. You're making really, really freaking good money. I can promise you that. Enjoy it and go ball out. Try and get yourself to the next level.
Yeah. Last question I got for you. What's the biggest misconception about NIL and college sports right now?
I would say the biggest misconception about college sports is that everybody keeps calling it the Wild West. Like, it is a pretty, in my opinion, a pretty mature market at this point. At least if you have someone on staff that's good enough to handle it, right? Yeah. It's only the Wild West when you have no control over what's going on. You have no control over your locker room. You got no control over the market. You don't understand it. Well, we do a lot of homework, man. We work with agencies, right? We are constantly benchmarking with Excel, Clutch, CAA at times. I'm having those conversations with guys who are in the midst of negotiations with other schools. What is going on in the market, right? And if those guys are giving you honest feedback, they're telling you what's happening, it's a lot more mature than you might think. There are contracts that typically are protecting schools from issues with athletes or protecting athletes with issues from schools. And I don't think that a lot of people understand how mature this has come over the last 3 years. And that's why you now see schools overtaking it, right? And becoming the primary payment system for all of these athletes. $20.5 million. Like, that's a lot of money. It's a significant amount of money that's coming out of their budget every year. And a lot of people think the NCAA is just like zapping that money into each department's budget. No,
Yeah.
like, those schools have to individually come up with that $20.5 million. And if they can't come up with it, they can't pay it. So
Yeah.
you have to, especially at the Power Four, the elite level of college sports, you got to come up with that 20 and a half plus. And it's not as easy as I might think. There's a lot of schools who are sitting around trying to come up with innovative ideas, come up with concepts like Floyd Media, finding ways to sell their opportunities and marketing rights for athletes. And man, it is a business. Just like anything, it's evolved, it's matured. It's not as much Wild West as you might think. That's why I love it. I think it's exhilarating. I think it's fascinating, and I think that if you are looking to get into college sports, like this niche, there's nothing better than it. It's never the same every day, and it's going to challenge the heck out of you to be creative and also business savvy at the same time.
I love it, man. Well, Dan Furman, you've been at the forefront of college sports. There's no one better to talk about it and talk about NIL. And I think this was informative for me. I think our audience will enjoy it as well. So it's been fun just getting to know you and building a friendship, and love all the work you're doing. Love the content you're putting out. Love what you're doing at 502 Circle, Floyd Street Media, and excited to see what you do in sports in the future, man.
Appreciate you, man. You're one of the best in the biz. Appreciate all you do for the game.
Thank you,
and
brother.
hopefully we'll be able to watch some college football games this fall.
Let's do it.
All right, man. I appreciate you.
Next up.